Hello and welcome. This is our Talk to Addis program. I am your host Alula Brahani. Today I have brought you a new guest. My guest is the former mayor of Bogota City in Colombia, Enrique Penalosa. Do stay with us. Welcome, Enrique.
Hello, Alula.
How are you?
Very well.
How is your stay in Addis Ababa?
I love Addis Ababa. It's the third time I come in the last year.
I would like you to introduce yourself first.
I am Enrique Penalosa.
Yeah.
I was mayor of Bogota on 2 occasions. Bogota is a 10 million inhabitant city. And what happened in the urbanization process in Latin America over the last 50 years is the same that is going to happen in Ethiopia over the next 50 years. So it's a very relevant experience that you should learn not to do what we did, but to avoid all the mistakes that we did. This is why I am here. I think I can help you to avoid these mistakes. I have worked in many cities all over the world and in many areas. And for example, I believe that for the mobility of Addis, you need to have a great BRT system. It's buses on exclusive lanes. You cannot dream that you are going to solve mobility with rail systems. It's too costly, it's too expensive, even if you make 1 or 2 lines. Our bus system today is moving more passengers per kilometer than all subways in the world, and it costs 20 times less. So there are some interesting challenges here, but you could do so many other things, like, as I say, greenways, parks crisscrossing the city in all directions. You could make in the future some roads that are half the space for pedestrian and bicycle, half the space for motor vehicles. I mean, you could do some things that nobody else has done in the world so far.
Good. Thank you. As your background tells us, you have had lots of experience in urbanization process. So tell us, what do we mean by urbanization, and how do you see the urbanization process that Addis Ababa is undergoing on?
Yes, I have worked in hundreds of cities around the world, and I think people in Ethiopia are not so conscious of what is coming here. Today, Addis Ababa plus Shagar is about 6 million inhabitants, and in 50 years it will be 60 million inhabitants, but the city will grow 20 times or 30 times in size. The urban population in Ethiopia is growing 1 New York every 6 years. 1 New York every 6 years. So it's like in Ethiopia you have to build 1 New York every 6 years, and all the housing, all the schools, all the roads, all the water. So it is a great opportunity to make cities that are much better than anything else in the world, because you could have, for example, a city, this 60 million inhabitant Addis Shagar there will be, you could have that thousands of kilometers of roads only for bicycles, or roads only for bicycles and buses. You could have many parks, or you could have greenways, parks that go across the city. You could go across the city for 100 kilometers inside the park. And especially in Ethiopia, you have something very special, is that land is publicly owned. This is very powerful, because in most countries land is privately owned, so it's very difficult for government to buy land for parks or buy land for... So what is happening here is, I mean, if Addis becomes a great city, which I think it can be one of the best cities in the planet, and it clearly will be one of the biggest and most important cities in the world. It can become an example for Africa, and it can become an example to the world.
What are your impressions about Addis Ababa? Tell us. You have been here for the third time.
I think at this time, I think there is so much construction going on. I think it's very few cities in the world are doing so much construction now. It's like China 20 years ago. What Mayor Addis Abibi is doing in terms of making sidewalks and bikeways and parks is very important, because what makes a difference between a good city and a bad one is not subways or highways, but pedestrian spaces.
Good. As a mayor of Bogota, a city with a significant experience in large-scale transport projects, what key lessons have Ethiopia learned from Bogota? What have you really advised them in the corridor development and urbanization, a city process that Addis Ababa is?
Well, what you call corridor development here, which is basically making cities for human beings, making cities with sidewalks, with bikeways, with parks. That is what every city in the world is trying to do now. And because we made a big mistake. For thousands and thousands of years, cities were made for people. But over the last 100 years, 120 years, we made cities more for cars than for people. And so we are now correcting the mistake, and we are trying to make cities more for people. We should also remember, if we have democracy, a citizen who is walking has a right to the same amount of road space as somebody in a luxury car. And, for example, somebody in a bicycle has the right to the same amount of road space as somebody in a car. And, for example, a bus with 200 passengers has a right to 200 times more space in the road than a car with one passenger. This is urban planning, but it's also democracy. And I believe that in Bogota, for example, we have a BRT, a bus-based mass transit, that is moving 2.5 million passengers per day. And it's been increased by 60%. So only the trunkways are moving 2.5 million passengers per day, but buses elsewhere are moving like 3 million more. In this area, I think we can have a lot to teach. Bicycling is, we made a lot of bikeways, and Bogota now has like more than 1 million daily trips by bicycle every day. So the weather in Addis is perfect. It's very nice weather. It's not too hot, not too cold. So I think it could be very good weather for walking and bicycling.
Good. In traffic and mobility improvements, like what you have said, the corridor development that Addis Ababa is, doing right now. What have you really observed in reducing traffic congestion, and what is your recommendation in this regard?
Well, the corridor development, again, I say that Mayor Addis Ababa is doing is very positive. And I know there is controversy because some buildings have to be demolished and all of this, but when Paris was being made, they also had to demolish a lot of buildings. And unfortunately, of course, we have to take as much care as possible of the people whose buildings are demolished. But I think in the end, this is a historical challenge. And also, for mobility, we have to understand something. Traffic jams are going to become much worse in Addis.
Yeah.
Traffic is going to become much worse. Many things in Ethiopia are going to become better. You will have better health, better education, better housing, but traffic is going to get worse. So you need to, it's important to understand that mobility and traffic are two different problems. I have two different solutions. Mobility you solve with mass transit. And as I say, the only possible mass transit that Addis can have is bus-based transit, BRT, buses on exclusive lanes. To think that you can solve it with rail is crazy. You even have this light rail that is not even working. It just moves almost nothing. But the rail costs much more and does less. So even if you do 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 subway lines, most of the people will move by bus. For example, in London, buses move 50% more people than subway. But that's just one ingredient. But if you want to solve traffic, that's a different problem. Subways or BRT will not solve traffic. If you want to solve traffic, you have to restrict car use. You have to restrict parking, for example. For example, in London, in the center of London, office buildings are not allowed to have parking, so everybody has to use public transport. Upper income people in Addis, the wealthy people, they go to Paris and they go to London or to New York, and they use the subway next to the poor people in London or in Paris or New York. But they don't want to use the public transport in Addis next to the poor people in Addis. So this is the challenges that we have for the future.
Good. Like what you have been saying, the public transportation integration, the corridor development that Addis Ababa is running has, improvements on different modes of transport, like the bus transports might be, taxis, possibly future rail systems as well. And all these things, how do you think the corridor will facilitate all these regards?
Yeah, clearly the corridor will make a better city, a more attractive city for people, more respectful of human dignity, more attractive for tourists. And I hope more people will use bicycles. Very few people use bicycles here in Addis today, but maybe we need some artist, some singer, or some to start using bicycles, because it's better for your health. People are more fit, they look better.
Good.
So it's interesting to know the more advanced cities, are the cities where the rich use public transport, the rich use bicycles, the rich walk in the street. But in the backward cities, the rich go in their cars everywhere. You see the rich in Paris or in London or in Amsterdam, they take public transport and they use bicycles. So someday the rich in Addis will do the same.
Good. Let's talk about the community and social impact. As the advent of the corridor development for the smart city project that Addis Ababa is underway, many considerable part of the community has been beneficiary in having a new modernized houses. So even the social impact that it has for social benefits. For example, we are witnessing that this, like what you have been saying, people are just using bikes and they are having, on walk, they are, walking on foot, all these things. These are social benefits. You would have an access to talk to people. There are expansion of, walkways, all these things. So how would you see this impact and how it is compatible to the standard of, the urbanization process that you have already witnessed in different countries? Let's talk in that regard.
Yes, in a good city, the rich and the poor, they meet as equals in public space. In a good city, like rich billionaires, they meet with low-income people next to each other as equals in Central Park in New York, or in Hyde Park in London, or in the Thames waterfront in London, or in Paris sidewalks. So good sidewalks will help to construct this kind of integration, at least for people to meet in public spaces as equals. And of course, again, I say, it's difficult how sometimes some homes have to be demolished to open up spaces. This is difficult, and government, of course, must make all the efforts to give them new houses, good houses, well located. This is the challenge, to do this, to minimize the cost, but it's impossible to improve the city without affecting some people. Government has to pay as much as possible to those whose homes they are buying or demolishing. They should pay as much as possible, but on the other hand, it's necessary.
Under this project, there are so many greenery areas like the one that we are in. So for environmental sustainability and climate resilient environment, what role does it have? How do you see it as an expert in this regard? The climatic actions that Addis Ababa is going on, because under this corridor project, we are having, reduction of traffic congestion. That by itself has paved the way for the reduction of carbon dioxide, because majority of the people will use walkways, bicycle lanes, and other kind of things. And as well, we are having, side by side of the corridor development, planting of trees and having garden areas, all these things. So how are they sustainably and environmentally fit?
Well, Ethiopia has publicly owned land, so they should have much more parks. I mean, Ethiopia, I think there are not enough parks in Addis. It's good that some parks are being opened up, but in the growth areas such as Shagar, we should have much more parks. We should have football fields everywhere. I mean, nobody should have to go more than 10 minutes to find a football field. It is necessary to make more and more parks, and it's possible here, especially in the new areas of the city where the city has not yet grown. We should have parks. I mean, people should not walk more than 5 minutes, 10 minutes at most to find a park, to find playgrounds, to find large parks. You could even have parks hundreds of kilometers long, crisscrossing the city, long parks, greenways. This is possible, but we need to plan it for the future Addis Shagar. And now, for sustainability, the most important thing is that we have density, that we have buildings. Here we have buildings. If we have buildings, high-rise buildings, this makes higher density, so it makes trips shorter. If you have a building, and then the distances are shorter, and public transport works well. If we have a city spread out, transport is more costly, there is more traffic, trips take longer time, more energy is consumed, there is more global warming. So a dense city is good we have to have a dense city, and now there are many buildings. It's a dense Addis, but we need much more parks.
Good. The economic impact, let's talk about the economic impact. For example, as of the corridor development, I just have interviewed some tourists. They are telling, by the time that they are on board from Bole Airport, now it takes very few minutes for them to go around and book or board to some hotels to get their accommodation, because the roads have been expanded. Not only that, as advent of the corridor development, many projects, for example, the Arwa project, Victory Memorial, you can see, and other kind of, Addis Ababa Convention Center. There are so many kind of, different exhibition and conference halls. So all these things have really, boosted up the conference tourism of Addis Ababa, the potential of Addis Ababa. So I think like what you have been saying, there are so many international diplomats here in this country. So they need to have some open spaces for them to go and make exercises, to have side talks, all these things. So I think, shall we talk about these things? Can you tell us, how do you evaluate the economic impact of this urbanization platform that Addis Ababa is underway?
What do tourists do when they go as tourists? They walk. What tourists like to do is to walk. If people go to London or to Paris or to New York, what do? Walk. And they want to walk in the street. They don't want to walk in a shopping mall. Shopping malls are not good for cities. Shopping malls are boring. Shopping malls are not good for tourists, because shopping malls everywhere have the same temperature, they have the same shops, they are boring. Nobody is going to come to Addis Ababa to go to the shopping malls. What people like to do is to walk in the street and to go to street cafes, restaurants, shops, to ride bicycle. That's the thing that people will want to do in Addis. If we want to have tourists, we need to have a city that is fun for walking. Why so many people go to Madrid or to Paris? Because they like to walk in the streets, not in shopping malls. In good cities there are no shopping malls. There are no shopping malls in Manhattan, there are no shopping malls in London, there are no shopping malls in Paris, there are no shopping malls in Madrid. In a good city, the shopping mall is the street, the sidewalk, the high street. And so, if we have a great city that is fun, and also it has a great airport and a great airline such as Ethiopian, it's possible that you will attract more congresses and conventions and things like this It's possible, but there will be more and more business in Ethiopia. There can be many. If there is peace in all the regions, there will be a lot of tourists, and there will be more investment and more industry. If we have peace and quality of life and good cities, I mean, Ethiopia has such brilliant people, very bright people, can be one of the wealthiest and most powerful countries in the world. Ethiopia now has like 125, 130 million inhabitants. Ethiopia will have 250, 300 million inhabitants in the future. But there is, of course, much to be done. I have flown over Ethiopia, and the rural areas have almost no roads. So we need more roads, we need, I mean, it's the normal process of development, but quality cities will be very helpful to attract investors. I mean, I say again, quality cities, peace, and all the capacities of Ethiopian people will create progress. All I'm saying is that since Ethiopian cities are going to be 20 times bigger, only 5% of 2075 Addis has been built. Only 5% of 2070 or 75 Addis has been built. 95% is yet to be built.
Okay.
You are a young man,
I see.
Alula.
Yeah.
And so by the time you are 80 years old, this city will be 20 times bigger than it is now. So the most interesting part for Ethiopia is that the new part that is not yet built is done different and better. That we can have, for example, what can be different than any other city in the world? It can be different that we can have hundreds of kilometers of greenways crisscrossing the city, that you can go across the city by bicycle without cars next to you. Or you can make hundreds of kilometers of roads in the new areas where half the road, half the space is for pedestrian and bicycle, only half the space for cars. Or you can have hundreds of kilometers of roads where there are only roads only for buses and pedestrians and bicycles. This is a different city. Paris would love to have this, or London, but they cannot, it's too late. But Addis can, because 95% is yet to be built. So, now what is being done here in Addis by our mayor, Adanesha Bibi, is to improve the things that have been done wrong. And it was necessary, and it's painful. But it's necessary to do what she's doing. Like here we have wonderful sidewalks next to us and bikeways. People don't yet use bicycles, but they will. They will. And so we need more parks, more sidewalks, and in the new areas, even more so. So a great city will attract more and more investors. For example, many companies that are going to be operating in Africa, they will locate in Addis because they have a great airline, they have a great city, so they can have the headquarters for their business in Africa in Addis Ababa, you know? So this will bring money, this will bring good jobs, and I think the important thing is to do things. Now, one last thing. Now, Mayor Adanesha Bibi is doing things, and she's doing things in the correct way for pedestrians and bicyclists. And now she's criticized. She's criticized sometimes. If she didn't do anything, she would not be criticized. That's what many politicians are expert in, doing nothing, just talking. But if you do things, you are criticized. So I admire the people who do, even if sometimes they can make mistakes. But I prefer those who do to those who talk and don't do anything.
Finally, I would be happy if you tell us, Enrique, your experiences as to how the challenges of urbanization have been tackled by Bogota city as compared to that Addis Ababa is having right now?
Here I will say some radical things. Beyond Addis, which we have already said the corridors are the right way to go, Ethiopian urban population is going to explode like a tsunami. As I said, Ethiopian urban population grows the equivalent of one New York every 6 years. You have to build one New York every 6 years. Well, the housing, schools, hospitals, water pipes, everything. So there is not enough money to build houses, homes for everybody. So I think Ethiopian government will need to give people just land and for them to build their own housing. At this time, there is much illegal development who is organized by some corrupt people, criminals who have some links to government, and they organize the illegal developments. Now, what I think is that government has to organize the illegal developments. What the criminals are doing, government has to do. Government has to organize to give low-income people land for them to build their own homes. Except that if government does it, it will not be illegal, it will be legal. And government can reserve the spaces for roads, the space for parks, and they can even give technical support to the low-income people as to how they should build their homes. And then they can bring water and sewage connections and schools, but government cannot simply demolish the illegal developments. Government will have to do illegal developments, legal developments, because what is going to happen is too giant. There is no money in Ethiopia to build one New York every 6 years. So you have to let the people themselves do it. And so what the illegal developers have been doing, now I think government will have to do it. Government in Shagar, government, and they can give them some, if there is money, they can give them some technical support, some low-cost building materials, some financing. But we have to know the size of this tsunami that is coming to Ethiopia. It's the worst mistake that could be done is to think that cities are not going to grow, or worse, to think that you have money to solve everything just with legal development. It's impossible to have enough money to give everybody an apartment or to make subways or things like this. That is not going to be possible.
Well, viewers, that was all what we have for you for today. As you have been watching, our guests, or honorable guest, was the former mayor of Bogota City, Enrique Penaloza. I hope that you have got an insightful lessons from our interview. Till we meet up with another guest in another episode, our program ends here. Bye-bye.